Sean Penn believed that ambushing Jonathan Roumie on live television would earn him standing ovations and headlines. He thought he'd found the perfect target, an actor who preached compassion, spoke softly, and rarely fought back. Penn called him a fraud, a facade, a disgrace to public consciousness and moral responsibility. But what he got in return wasn't silence. It was something far more dangerous. It was truth, sharp as broken glass, cold as stone. Because Roumie didn't come with a counterpunch, he came with evidence. And the man who thought he was staging a public execution was already 1 foot into his own legacy's grave. Where are you watching this from? Comment below and stay with us until the end. This may not just surprise you, it might restore your faith in accountability. It all started like any other primetime news segment, flickering across television screens as families ate dinner. The headline ticker at the bottom read, Jonathan Roumie, controversy or cover. The anchors leaned forward, cards in hand, eyes gleaming behind forced neutrality. They were ready for another debate, but Sean Penn wasn't here to debate. He was here to detonate. Clad in a tailored charcoal gray suit, seated comfortably beneath the studio lights, Penn radiated a calm so manufactured it should have come with a warning label. And when asked about Roumie's recent defense of a humanitarian initiative, he smiled. Not the kind of smile that comforts, the kind that signals a blade about to drop. Let's stop pretending Jonathan Roumie stands for any kind of moral integrity, Penn began, his voice velvet soft but venom-laced. He is not a symbol of virtue. He is the manicured face of spiritual hypocrisy. The studio froze. Even the most seasoned panelists glanced uneasily at the producers. Penn leaned closer to the mic, his tone sharpening, not loud but cutting. Jonathan Roumie is the legal equivalent of a photo op, a man who built his career on looking noble, not being noble. He doesn't stand for the people, he poses for them. One of the hosts shifted, trying to moderate. Penn didn't let him. Let's be clear, he continued, holding the room hostage with calm authority. This is a man who's benefited from backroom donations, then championed reforms that protect his inner circle. That's not leadership, that's betrayal wrapped in charisma. A second host cleared his throat, visibly tense. Penn wasn't finished. We've confused religious posturing with moral clarity for too long, he declared. Jonathan Roumie is a walking PR stunt, and this country deserves better than a man who claims to fight injustice while dining comfortably with power. He ended the monologue with an ironic grin, eyes locked on the main camera. I won't apologize for saying it. We don't need more soft-spoken saints in tailored suits. We need someone who'll tell the truth, even if it shatters illusions. Twitter lit up before the segment even ended. Some called it courage, others called it cruelty. Some praised Penn for saying what needed to be said. Others accused him of egotistical theatrics and hollow moralizing. But one thing was certain. In less than 4 minutes, Sean Penn had lit a rhetorical match and tossed it into a room full of gasoline. And no one expected how Jonathan Roumie would respond. Some called it courage, others called it desperation. But beneath all the noise, something more unsettling emerged. Jonathan Roumie said nothing. No tweets, no statements, no publicist, just silence. Heavy, deliberate silence. The kind that doesn't whisper weakness, but plans something. And for many, that was more disturbing than anything Sean Penn had shouted. Because while cable hosts picked apart Penn's monologue, while pundits dissected his attack frame by frame, the man in the center of the storm didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't even seem to notice. Washington noticed. Senate aides exchanged whispers. Capitol advisors looked at each other with unease. Because in D.C., when someone doesn't defend themselves, there are only two possibilities. They're either hiding something or they're preparing everything. And while Penn continued to bask in the afterglow of applause and attention, the office of Jonathan Roumie, tucked inside a quiet arts center just outside Los Angeles, remained motionless. No panic, no leaked memos, no calls to friendly press, only a deep, controlled silence. But behind that silence, strategy. Inside, Jonathan Roumie sat upright in a modest, book-filled room. No advisors, just a small desk. He wasn't writing a speech, he was reviewing a document, a financial breakdown. Next to it, a leather-bound notebook filled with steady, precise handwriting. He didn't react to insults, he traced them. Not for vengeance, but for clarity. The media, of course, didn't see any of this. They weren't supposed to. Instead, they filled the void with speculation. He's cornered. He's too fragile to fight back. Where's his team? Where's his fire? A viral headline on a progressive blog read, The silence of the saint. Another. Roumie hides behind holiness. Late-night host had a field day. He's so quiet you'd think his PR team staged an intervention with duct tape. But inside Roumie's camp, there was no laughter. Because Jonathan Roumie wasn't hiding, he was calculating. His first phone call the next morning wasn't to a lawyer or press agent. It was to an old contact, a discreet forensic auditor named Eli, known for tracing nonprofit funds across borders. Their conversation was brief, almost clinical. Roumie gave him two lists. One, organizations linked to urban compassion grants in Bogota and Buenos Aires. Two, a few names, faded from headlines but never forgotten. And one date, October 17th, 2019. By noon, Eli had flagged 3 community programs with highly irregular transactions, each tied to development projects, each endorsed by Sean Penn's Humanitarian Foundation, each receiving substantial public donations within days of Penn's private fundraising events. The pattern, public money in, filtered through shell nonprofits, then out again disappeared. Roumie didn't react with outrage. He opened a slim drawer, pulled out a clean manila folder, and wrote a single word on it by hand: evidence. That afternoon, his communications director entered with visible tension. "You're trending since 7 a.m., she said. "They're calling you the actor in a collar. Should we respond?" Roumie looked up slowly, then back at his notes. "You don't outrun a storm," he said gently. "You stand in it and let the sky clear." She pressed again, but the reaction, he stopped her with a raised hand. "Let them speak," he said. "I'm not going to shout back to compete with him. I'm going to bury him in the truth." That evening, as the press circled Roumie's office like sharks catching the scent of blood, a young aide stepped forward, holding a printed tweet from Sean Penn's official account. "I don't regret a word. America needs fighters, not figureheads." Roumie barely glanced at it. Instead, he uncapped his pen and wrote 2 calm words in his folder: October disclosures. Then, opening his rarely used personal social media account, he typed a single sentence: "I'm not going to scream. I'm going to prove it." No emojis, no hashtags, no filters, just stillness, the kind that unnerves men who profit from chaos. The tweet landed like a whisper through a thunderstorm. Some scoffed. "That's it?" one commentator mocked. No defense, no denial, just vibes. But others paused, because in a world that rewards outrage, there was something unnerving about a man who refused to perform, about a man who wasn't playing for applause. Analysts split down the middle. "He's folding under pressure," said one anchor. "No," replied another, "he's waiting for the lights to dim so the evidence can speak." One retired congressional aide tweeted simply, "If Roumie's quiet, check your inbox. He probably already sent the receipts." While Sean Penn made the rounds on primetime TV, smiling, gloating, spinning, Jonathan Roumie wasn't preparing a rebuttal. He was preparing the reckoning. At exactly 4 p.m., the doors opened. Jonathan Roumie walked into the press room. He wasn't dressed for theatrics. A navy blue jacket, pressed shirt, hair neatly combed. His face was unreadable, not hardened, just steady. He didn't walk like a man cornered. He walked like a man entering a courtroom, not to defend himself, but to testify. There was no entourage, no legal counsel, no PR team, just a man in a slim manila folder in his left hand. He approached the podium calmly, placed the folder down with care, adjusted the microphone himself. No teleprompter, no notes, no handlers, just truth, waiting its turn. He looked directly into the main camera. "Good afternoon," he began, voice velvet in glass. "I didn't come here to respond to insults, or to mockery, or to noise." A pause, intentional, heavy. Then he continued. "But when a public figure goes on national television and accuses me of being a moral danger to this country, I owe not him a defense. I owe you a revelation." The room tensed, hands hovered over keyboards. No one blinked. Roumie opened the folder slowly, not for show, but for clarity. Inside, printed reports, color-coded tabs, and financial documents already filed in the public record, but never seen by the people. "What I have here isn't rhetoric. It's not spin, it's documentation." He lifted a sheet. "This is a paper trail, 92,000 in public funds earmarked for community development programs in South America." He held it up. The camera zoomed in. On the surface, these appear to be grants for youth programs, small businesses, and public health. But trace the money through shell nonprofits, subcontractors, and offshore intermediaries, and they all lead to the same place. He clicked a small remote. A screen lit up beside him. A digital map of shell companies, dollar amounts, and campaign photos. At the center, a name, Sean Penn. Gasps, real, audible. 3 of these organizations, Caminos Nuevos, Fundación Arcosur, and the Center for Civic Development, all received funds between 2018 and 2020. All 3 failed transparency audits, and all 3 share something else. They're operated by individuals who helped raise over $2.1 million for Sean Penn's political network during the same cycle. Click. The room didn't erupt in questions. It erupted in typing. "Let's be clear," Roumie said without blinking. "This isn't an administrative slip. This is a system designed to launder public funds through noble-sounding nonprofits, disguising campaign influence as community aid. And for years," he added, "I studied that system." He turned another page. "Here's a contract, signed October 2019, $3 million transferred to Fundación Caminos Nuevos. 10 days later, that same organization spent $250,000 on digital ad buys, promoting slogans like integrity, transparency, and justice, all featuring Sean Penn's face. He looked up, his voice dropping into something surgical. He called me a mask, but what he saw wasn't my disguise. It was his reflection. A journalist finally spoke. "Are you accusing him of criminal behavior?" Roumie didn't flinch. "I'm not accusing. I'm showing. This is public information. The only thing I've done is follow the money." He clicked again. Another page, another name, another silent connection. While Sean Penn gave speeches on integrity, he was authorizing contracts that rerouted millions through phantom NGOs. While I was feeding the hungry, he was fundraising with the corrupt. While I was silent, I was investigating. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. "I didn't create this system, but I learned it, I traced it, and at the bottom of every page was his signature." The silence in the room wasn't awkward. It was reverent. "I didn't come here to defend myself, because I don't owe defense to men who hide behind microphones and ego. I came to hold up a mirror." He leaned slightly forward. "He can throw all the insults he wants, but the difference between us is simple. I don't need to yell for truth to matter. I bring evidence, and his is expired." He closed the folder, sharp, final, like a gavel. "This isn't revenge," he said, now flat and implacable. "This is verification. And now, this is accountability." And just like that, Jonathan Roumie walked away. No bow, no drama, only silence behind him. Not empty, but earned. He didn't need applause, because in every kitchen, on every teacher's break, on every soldier's phone, the evidence was already speaking. And the internet exploded, but not the way Sean Penn expected. Within 20 minutes, clips of Roumie's calm dismantling flooded every platform. But this time it wasn't analysts or influencers who shared it. It was nurses, teachers, mothers, truckers, veterans. They weren't mocking him. They were thanking him. The phrase "Roumie brought the evidence" trended within the hour. Freeze frames of him closing the folder became memes. When truth hits harder than theatrics. YouTube titles read, "Roumie ends Sean Penn's career in 8 minutes." TikTok edits repeated his words. Some whispered them, others mouthed along in silence. Even some of his harshest critics paused. Inside Penn's camp, however, silence turned to panic. By 6 p.m., his digital team was deleting clips from earlier that morning, especially the one where he called Roumie a made-up moral figure with a haircut. What had felt like a surgical strike now looked like self-sabotage. Campaign advisors sent frantic texts, "Delete old posts. The comments are brutal. We've lost the narrative." Inspirational videos from Penn's foundation were now flooded with replies. "Where's the transparency, Sean? Did Caminos Nuevos sign that contract?" Newsrooms flipped their tone overnight. One primetime special was retitled, "Roumie's Bombshell, What We Know About the $92 Million." Another network brought in a forensic analyst to explain how fake NGOs launder credibility. Even the late-night comedians, once mocking Roumie, now paused their punchlines. "We came here to make jokes," one said, but Jonathan Roumie didn't bring a monologue. He brought receipts. Even the late-night comedians, the ones who used to mock Jonathan Roumie's quiet demeanor, were no longer laughing. One opened his monologue with an awkward grin. "Tonight we were ready to make jokes, but Roumie didn't bring punchlines. He brought documents." Inside Sean Penn's campaign offices, the atmosphere had shifted from confidence to collapse. Phones were ringing non-stop. Tweets vanished. Press kits were rewritten mid-sentence. A mid-level advisor stared at a blank response file and muttered, "We don't even have a fallback plan." No one answered him. By nightfall, cracks had become fractures. Former aides began leaking anonymous tips to journalists. One wrote simply, "This isn't a scandal. This is betrayal," by someone who claimed to be better than the system he weaponized. Jonathan Roumie didn't campaign for sympathy. He didn't attack Sean Penn's character. He just tracked the paper trail. And the internet responded. Fast. The public didn't want speeches anymore. They didn't want image. They wanted proof. And Roumie had given them exactly that. One user posted, "We believed in Sean, but second chances require accountability first." Roumie said nothing, and yet said everything. No press tour, no talking heads, just the same unshakable silence, now no longer passive, but absolute. By 2:41 a.m., Sean Penn finally broke. Still wearing the shirt from that morning, sleeves rolled, tie discarded, eyes sunken, he stood in his hotel suite staring out over the sleeping city. His phone buzzed again. Another headline, another meme, another 1,000 comments demanding answers. An aide handed him a small paper, a phone number, private line. "He's not talking to the media," the aide whispered. "But we got this." Sean took it, paused, then dialed it. 3 rings, silence, then a voice, calm, firm, dry. "Roumie speaking." Sean hesitated, then tried to sound casual. "Jonathan, look, I'm not calling for drama. I just thought maybe we should talk, human to human." Silence, then, "Say what you need to say." Penn exhaled hard. "I don't know what the hell that was today, but it felt personal." Roumie answered steady, "It wasn't personal, Mr. Penn. It was factual." Penn's tone grew frustrated. "You know what happens when you accuse someone of corruption on live TV? You don't just destroy headlines. You erase reputations. You undo years of service." A beat. "You mean when you called me a fraud in front of millions?" Roumie replied, no anger, just precision. "You said I was a mask over a rotten system, and I showed the receipts." Penn's voice cracked. "That wasn't fair. I was reacting to what I thought I saw." Roumie cut in, not cruel, just clear. "You gave speeches about integrity, while your name signed contracts that funneled money through ghost nonprofits. You stood on a stage and condemned hypocrisy, while living inside it." Penn began pacing, his voice rising. "This is politics, Roumie. You think you're cleaner just because you speak softly and carry a folder?" Roumie didn't flinch. "I'm not perfect, but at least I didn't stand in front of the nation and question another man's soul, knowing I had $92,000 worth of silence hidden in the shadows." A long pause, then quieter, almost desperate. "Why now? Why didn't you say something before? Why not warn me?" Roumie answered with a quiet disbelief. "Warn you, Sean? You think this was about you? They've called me worse. This wasn't for revenge. This was for the people who believed in you and got campaign poetry in return." Then came the final line, not loud, but lethal. "You attacked with words. I responded with evidence. And here's the truth. You can't preach morality while laundering influence. You can't throw stones and hide your balance sheets." Penn said nothing, not because he agreed, but because he had nothing left to refute it with. And just before Roumie hung up, he delivered the last blow. Low, final, absolute. "You opened a door for which you were never clean enough to walk through." Click, call ended. Because truth doesn't need to win, it just needs to be remembered. If you heard this story for the first time, tell us in the comments. If you believe accountability still matters, leave a like and subscribe.